Everyone dreams about living an uncommon life, but how we define that dream is very different for each of us. And for most, it's a lifelong pursuit. Welcome to the Uncommon Life Project podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living that life or enjoying the journey to get there. We're going to also give you some tools, tricks, and tips for starting or accelerating your own efforts to live an uncommon life, a life worth celebrating and savoring. Please welcome your hosts, Brian Dewhurst and Philip Ramsey.
Welcome, everybody, to the Uncommon Life Project. This is your host, Philip Ramsey.
And this is Brian Dewhurst.
Thank you so much for listening to us, everyone. This is going to be an amazing episode this week. We have one of our favorite people to talk to, and I think he's going to be one of your favorites too. His name's Drew McLellan. Man, he is a rock star.
Welcome, Drew.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just talk really quick about Drew, his background. He's been in at least 25 years, a marketing veteran, serves his clients very well. He also runs a different company called the Agency Management Institute, where he teaches other marketers. He coaches them on how to be better marketers. And he has a third company, the McLellan Properties. And so he's got a lot of things going on. And my hope for this whole thing is just to give his listeners a little bit of more insight of how he runs his business, how he has such a successful business, as well as give our listeners just a different way to go through this whole residual income and working off different businesses and how they all fit together. This is a great person to talk to. So he loves to create aha moments for his clients. We've definitely been a part of that. And so he's written books. Brian, you can tell him about that.
Yeah, so Drew is one of the world's top marketing and branding bloggers, according to Ad Age's Top 150 Index. He's written the book 99.3 Random Acts of Marketing, co-editing the Age of Conversation series of books, and he launched McLellan Marketing Group back in 1995. He recently appeared in the New York Times, Entrepreneur Magazine, Business Week, and Fortune Small Business. And the Wall Street Journal calls him one of the top 10 bloggers that every entrepreneur should read.
He also owns his own podcast called Build a Better Agency, which he helps his listeners scale and grow their own agencies. Again, we hope this podcast gives you guys a little insight on his listeners or for his listeners. Just maybe give them a little bit different perspective because he's usually the host. And so now he gets to be the interviewee. So welcome, Drew. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
All right, Drew. So let's just start because it obviously hasn't been roses and sunshines for you, and it sounds like it is now, and I believe it 100% to be true. But let's talk about before this was all happening, when you're more of the common, working for somebody else, kind of employee mindset. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people who find themselves as an entrepreneur or business owner, that wasn't really my plan. I think people who are in college today or in their 20s today, they were exposed to the idea of being an entrepreneur in a much bigger, broader way than I was. So I'm almost 55. And so when I went to college, my assumption was I was going to work for somebody else for my whole career and that I might rise to the rank of president at someone else's agency. But it never occurred to me that I would want to be a business owner. And so I started my career. I worked for great agencies and things were fine, but they were, I had the normal constraints that an employee has. I could only make as much money as my employer allowed me to make. I had a set number of vacation days. I didn't have a very flexible schedule. So there was nothing wrong with my life, but it wasn't everything that it could be.
Sure. Let's talk about the good things back then, because obviously there's good things and bad things. What were the good things that you were dealing with when you were an employee, working your way up the corporate ladder?
Yeah. Well, remember, I was never on the corporate side. I've only worked in agencies my whole life. So there's a vast difference, thank God, between agents and corporations.
Sure.
But, the good side of that was, I didn't have to worry about making payroll.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to worry about whether or not we got a new client because I got a paycheck every other week. I never worried about all of the administrative expenses or hassles of, negotiating with lawyers or leases or any of the stuff that comes with being an entrepreneur, especially an entrepreneur with employees, which I have. So the worry factor was very different, but the worry factor and the opportunity factor are sort of in alignment, right? So
Mhm.
I didn't have to worry as much, but my opportunities were capped as well. And, I didn't realize that it never occurred to me until I stepped out on my own that, yes, there were more worries, and there still are even today. I mean, I don't want to blow smoke up anybody's skirt. There's still days where you go, okay, seriously, what am I doing? But all of a sudden, I began to see that there were opportunities at a scale that I had never imagined before.
Yes. So let's dive in on that, Drew. Walk us through those opportunities and the mindset shift that took place to owning your own agency.
Well, for me, the biggest opportunity was, I have a daughter who's today 24 years old, but back then she was a baby. And then as my business grew, obviously, so did she. And while making more money was certainly a part of it for me, and that happened within the first year or two of starting my own agency. For me, the biggest currency, the biggest value of being self-employed was the freedom that it gave me. So I took my daughter to school every day, and I picked my daughter up from school, at 3:30, depending on what grade she was in, every single day. And then I hung out with her after school. So when she was ripe with news or whatever was going on, I got it. It was fresh. And then I would work what I called the second shift after she went to bed, right? Or when she got older, when she was doing homework, I was doing homework. But the freedom to be able to do that, the freedom to take as much vacation as I wanted to, the freedom to be able to work from wherever I happened to be on the globe without having to check in or count it against a certain number of vacation days. That for me was really the ultimate freedom. It allowed me to be the kind of parent that I wanted to be.
Mm.
And I wouldn't have been able to do that as somebody's employee, not at the level that I did.
Sure. So when you talk about like that missing component, you talked about just the time with your daughter. So when you first started, I think we were really feeling this, like, I guess, undertone of just the sacrifice that you had to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I heard that you had to sacrifice, obviously, your time, because at first you were just a father. And then when she went to bed, then you were a business owner.
Right.
So tell me, when you were sacrificing that, how big of a pull was the steady paycheck? Because I feel like as entrepreneurs, we talk about the good of the old life, right? The common life. And sometimes that can outweigh what we're doing in the present. Did you ever have any moments where you thought, man, that steady paycheck is really appealing up at 2:00 in the morning? Or did you ever maybe you never had that?
Yeah. For me, I never experienced that. I loved being able to decide what the business that I represented was all about. I love being able to serve clients the way I thought they should be served. I loved the freedom of not taking a paycheck if the business needed me not to, or taking an extra paycheck if the business had additional funds.
Sure.
But I love being in control of my own destiny and really shaping what my professional life would be like, and understanding for the first time that I could build a business, or as it is today, businesses, that I first figured out what I wanted my life to be, and then I let the businesses support that.
Mm.
And no job is going to ever do that for me, right? So for me, the sacrifices were and are worth the upside of it, which is huge, both financially and in every other way that an entrepreneur talks about the perks of being self-employed.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was your plan? How did you walk through that? And when you first started, obviously you had to sit down and kind of craft this whole this whole entrepreneurial uncommon life. How did you start with that plan? Where did that go for you?
Well, in fairness, if there's a theme to the way I've built my businesses, the theme would be being smart enough to recognize dumb luck when it kicked me in the rear end, right? So when I started the agency, it never occurred to me that I would have multiple businesses, or I would be able to leverage the tax advantages that come with being an entrepreneur. I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to do the agency life the way I thought it should be done. That was sort of the extent of my lofty goals, right? And all of a sudden, as opportunities presented themselves, as I got smarter about tax strategy and things like that, all of a sudden I was taking advantage of those. And then the real estate company, honestly, was my daughter was getting ready to go to college, and I had this big old house that I had raised her in that the cat and I did not need to live in a, 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom house, right?
Sure.
So I was trying to sell it. Well, I was trying to sell it when the market was slow. And I had a great real estate agent, and he said, well, why don't you use it as an executive rental? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, oh my gosh, there's all this demand for, the pioneers and the principals of the world bring these executives in, and their spouses are like, Des Moines, Iowa, maybe not. So a lot of them rent for a year to see if they want to stay. And he said, it's a huge market, and we can't find enough houses like yours because they obviously want to live in a nice neighborhood, in a great school district, in a great house. So that was the stupid way that I started my real estate company. But I was smart enough to go, I want to downsize to a townhouse. I had the resources because of business number one.
Sure.
In essence, to float owning that house and buying a townhouse. And I immediately got renters. I immediately figured out how to do that in terms of the tax strategies and all of that. I became a student of real estate. And then I was like, I could leverage this house to buy other houses and properties.
Yes.
So now I own a bunch. So that was dumb luck. And, Agency Management Institute, I was a customer of that organization for many years as an agency owner. The guy came to me and said, I want to retire. I think you're the guy. And long story short, at first I was like, I don't want to be the guy. And then I realized I kind of did want to be the guy. And we cut a deal. And all of a sudden now, what that business does for me is, I'm on, as you guys know, I'm on 200 planes a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are.
So, and I'm staying in a hotel, as you can tell by the background, a lot, right? Because this is not what my house looks like. So what I realized from that is that one of the freedoms that is most important to me is to be able to travel with my daughter. So our goal is to visit every continent before she's done with school. She's in nursing, the nursing program now. She got her undergrad, and now she's in the nursing program. And, we only have 3 or 4, I think 3 continents left.
Wow.
But what I didn't really realize was flying on 200 planes means you have a lot of miles, right?
A lot of perks.
So, right. There are a lot of perks around it. So the other thing that was a big goal for me is that I love Walt Disney World. I mean, I've been on Disney property at least once a year since it opened in 1971. That's the depth of my love for Disney World. So I want to be there a lot. Well, you know what? One of my businesses teaches public workshops, and I can hold them anywhere I want to. So guess what? In January of every year, I spend 3 weeks on Disney property at my company's expense, and people actually pay me to be there because I'm teaching workshops there.
That's amazing.
How awesome is that? Right?
That's uncommon. That's uncommon.
But if you would have rolled back to 1995 and said, hey, Drew, you're starting this new agency, how is that going to help you live on Disney property at least a month a year, which we know would make you happy? I would have gone, I have no idea.
Sure.
But I was always open to the opportunities that were presented, and I have exploited them to the nth degree to try and create this life that I want to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really neat. So I want to kind of key in on that. You had McLellan Marketing Agency, which is kind of a marketing agency in the traditional sense that people might interact with. And then you were presented with an opportunity to purchase another business, which is a coaching program that teaches other marketing agency owners how to be the best they can be. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I feel a little like that, those hair club commercials where the guy goes, I'm not just the owner of the company, but I'm a client too. So I as an agency owner was a part of this organization. Mm-hmm. And when the founder wanted to sell it, he offered it to me and I bought it. So all of a sudden the student became the teacher. Sure. And so now when I go out and I talk to other agency owners, what they love is the fact that I still also own an agency, because I understand the pain that they go through every day because I'm doing it as well. But I also work with 250 agencies. So there are some best practices that I'm able to teach them and that I've employed in my own business that allow them to do their work better and smarter and make more money. So yeah, so I have those 2 businesses that sort of run concurrently and support each other.
Yeah.
And then I have the real estate thing on the side.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so when we talk to our clients about residual income, business is obviously one of the most important that we feel.
Right.
So you've got that. And now you've added the real estate portfolio, which is another key component. I also share an affinity for Disney. And the first time I was there, I got to go, there's a little movie theater in the park in Florida, and they have a little 10-minute video on Walt Disney. And they talk about the genesis for the idea of the theme parks. He was taking his daughters on daddy-daughter dates, and he couldn't find anything to do. He was bored. And that was actually how the theme park came about. And the banks, when he went to the banks to finance it, they thought he was crazy. And he ended up taking a loan from a life insurance policy to start Disneyland in California. So I know you also share an affinity for life insurance. So could you talk about how you've integrated life insurance into your strategy?
Yeah. So, one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur, obviously, and somebody who is leveraging every tax strategy that they can to minimize their tax burden. So I'm all about paying my fair share of taxes, but I really abhor the idea of paying more than my fair share, which, by the way, for many years early in my business, before I got smart about it, I think now about the checks that I wrote to the IRS, and it makes my eyes water a little bit, right? But anyway, so as I've gotten smarter about tax strategy, I'm less attractive to banks, right? So I own all these real estate companies or all these real estate properties. I own two. I'm self-employed twice. A lot of banks are like, I'm sorry, you want to buy a what? And how much is that, right? So I knew that I needed in essence to be my own bank. I needed to be able to have this pool of money that I could borrow and pay back and borrow and pay back, along with, obviously I have HELOCs on a lot of my properties, and I'm leveraging the equity in those properties now because I've paid most of them off. So now I'm leveraging the home equity of those to buy more properties, but I still needed a big pot of money that was bigger than what a HELOC might give me. And so, and I know sooner or later banks are going to go, no, you cannot have yet another HELOC, right? So I, in full transparency, somebody was talking to me about you guys, a mutual friend of ours, and was telling me about this idea of overfunded whole life policies, cash value whole life policies. And I didn't know anything about it. So, fortunately, I'm a pretty good student and a great reader. I can read quickly. So I went out and got a bunch of books. I read about it. And then I reached out to you. And so now I've got two policies. I have one on myself and I have one on my daughter. And I use that as, I think of it as the McLellan private bank, right? So when I need $50,000 or $100,000 and I need it in a hurry, I don't have to have a discussion with anybody. I just trigger the loan feature of those policies, borrow it, and then I can either pay it back in whole or I can pay back just the interest. Again, my daughter's 24. She's going to get plenty of money when I die. In fact, I don't like to go down the stairs in front of her because it's just not a smart move, right? But so even if I am out $100,000 on my, $3 million worth of life insurance, because of the value of the life insurance keeps growing, right? So even if I'm out $100,000 and I haven't paid that back, well, they just take that out before they give her the rest of her $3 million. She'll be fine, right? So for me, it's just another way to be ready to, again, keeping in mind that my entrepreneurial theme is dumb luck followed by being smart enough to recognize that good fortune is kicking me in the rear end. So I need to be ready because it's not always some well thought out 5-year in the making plan. It's just something presents itself that I want to take advantage of. And I need the money this week or next week. And, even if the bank was excited about lending me money, we know how the speed at which a bank moves, right?
Yeah.
So this way I can literally have $100,000 or whatever dollar amount I want in my checking account within a few days. And that flexibility and that freedom and not having to provide tax forms or, my P&L year to date or any of that kind of stuff. Because guess what? I'm a very lenient banker to me, right?
Yeah.
So I don't ask for any forms. I just give me the money.
It's actually a very freeing feeling when you have that. And so it's great to hear you talk about that, especially how you integrate it in your plan.
So for me, the greatest luxury being where I'm at today. So again, remember, I've owned my own business for almost 25 years. So this didn't happen overnight. It was a bunch of small little steps.
Sure.
But I will tell you the freedom today of knowing that, I spent the last 5 years being the caretaker for my mom. And she passed away about a year ago. And having the freedom to come and go and care for her, to have the money to do what I needed to do to make sure that she was well taken care of, that she lived in a facility, that she had her own room and she had private nursing and she had a level of care that was worthy of my mom. To have the freedom to do that, that's an incredible luxury. And then when my mom passed away, I wanted to commemorate her, to memorialize her in a way that would go on forever. And to be able to pick up the phone and call a university and say, hey, I want to start a scholarship in my mom's name, and I want to fund it in a way that forever and ever people will know who my mom is and what she was about. And to have the money to do that, that's an incredible blessing. And that's every day I am aware of how fortunate I am that I'm in this position. And I'm not a bazillionaire. I drive a Jeep, right? I'm not talking about, and I live in a, 3-bedroom townhouse in Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
But I'm planning a trip to Australia with my daughter, and we're not going to stay in crappy hotels, and we're not flying coach, right? So where I want to spend money, I have the money to spend.
Sure.
That's an incredible luxury and blessing that I would have never, ever had as somebody else's employee.
So good. So you talked about your mother, and I know how special she was to you. Tell us about the other, maybe she is your kind of mentor in your career and in your life. Tell us other mentors in your life and talk about those, or who are you surrounding yourself with to help you live this uncommon life?
So I think you have mentors at all kinds of levels. So without a doubt, my parents have sort of taught me about what matters, and family and honor and commitment to the people that are in your life. I mean, my parents were great role models around that. And my dad is still alive and still continues. I talk to him almost every day, and we talk about everything from business to what's going on with my daughter to his world. And so he helps keep me grounded. And my mom was that for me as well. But in terms of mentors, so I have people in my professional life that keep teaching me how to do my own business better. Sort of how do I, in a lot of ways, my clients, my customers are great mentors, because I learn by teaching them, I learn a lot from them. But then I've also realized that I need a pool of people around me. So literally I have a list of advisors, and this sounds morbid and I don't mean to, but I have a list of people who, if something happens to me, my daughter needs to call right away. And they're the people who have helped me put together this life. So they're people like you guys and, the financial planner who I started with a long time ago that I still have a little bit of stuff with, my tax guy, my attorney. So I've surrounded myself with professionals who help me explore what's possible and help me make it happen. And so, one of the things that I love about those people, so, when I call you guys and I go, hey, I have a crazy idea, you never go, no, you can't do that. You step in and go, how can we help you let's figure out a way to make that work.
Right.
How do we do that? And as you know, one of the things I've done is I've started to marry those advisors and those mentors. So, you guys talk to my tax guy all the time, right? Because I need somebody to help me sort of look at the big picture and sort of sort all this out. Because, finance and investment and taxes, all of that money and math stuff, that's not my background. So I need to have people around me who can explain it to me in little words very slowly, so I can track with it and figure out how it fits into the grand scheme of this life that I'm building.
Yeah. And I would say too, just for Eric's, just working with your tax guy, he educates, and that's the way we feel like we do, right? You come up with an idea, we educate, you tell us where you want to go. Instead of you come to us, we sell you something, we close you, and then you feel sleazy on the way out, right? There's definitely this common respect between the people that we work with for our clients. And we never sell, we always educate. And that's something that really resonates with you and many of our clients. And so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, Drew, I think I want to go back to one thing. You're in a unique position with all these business owners that you meet and get to spend time with year in, year out. Looking at the transformation that you even said it's taken you decades to get to this spot, right? What's like the one or two things that, as you see with all the business owners you're working with, that are preventing them from kind of giving themselves permission to go to this next level or this life they want to design?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think in a lot of cases, I think people who own businesses, especially if they have employees, make a couple mistakes. Number one, they don't really often understand, and one of the roles that I play with our clients is they don't really understand sort of the metrics that they should use to run their business. So how much money should I make from a client? What is an acceptable, rate of return on that client? And then when I get the pot of money, how do I divvy that pot of money up appropriately so there's money left at the bottom line for me? Because what a lot of business owners do is they spend all of their money on their people and overhead, and there's nothing left for them. And, I was guilty of that in the beginning of owning the business until I really started to learn how to make sure that there was a net profit at the end and what to do with that in a way that it didn't just all go to Uncle Sam. Because if that's going to be the case, I might as well just give it to my people. I'd rather have them have it, right? So number one, it's about understanding how to run their business in a way that is profitable for them. Number two, it's how to get the money out of the business. That's the other mistake they make. They leave it inside the business. So most of them are S corps or LLCs. They pay tax on that money because it's passed through, but they don't get it out, and then they end up petering it away on bad business decisions as opposed to building their wealth outside of their business while they own their business. That's the biggest mistake I see business owners make, is that we have this unique opportunity to build wealth. And again, it could be, you could own real estate like I do. You could own, racehorses. You could own fine art that is going to appreciate over time. I don't care. You could invest in the market. I don't really care what you do, but get it out of your business and put it someplace else. Diversify your opportunities and create that passive income outside of the business so that you're creating an asset. So if at the end of the day, I don't sell any of my businesses, it doesn't matter. Will I sell at least one of them, if not more of them? Of course I will. And will I eventually either liquidate the real estate or will it to my daughter? Absolutely. But I've built up enough other opportunities outside of, say, my agency, which was my original business, that if I end up just locking the door someday when I'm 82 and don't want to do it anymore, okay, that's fine. But most business owners don't put themselves in that position. So I think the biggest mistake they make is they think that there's some big payout down the road, as opposed to realizing that they have to create their own payout and they need to start today. And even if it's $1 today and $2 tomorrow and $5 in a month and $10 by the end of the year, you start where you start. I mean, again, my start was just keeping a house I had already bought. I mean, that was my start of sort of diversifying my own portfolio. And I have the 401k and I have some investments. I'm not saying I didn't do that, but in terms of really controlling my wealth and wealth being a relative term, but controlling my nest egg, whatever that is, in a business or businesses where I can sort of amplify my opportunities, that took me a while to figure out. And I think sometimes I wonder, where would I be if I had done it when I was 30 rather than, 45.
Yeah, we talk about residual income a lot with our clients, and that's exactly what we say is, yeah, that business is one form of residual income, but what are we going to do about the other 6? Let's start pulling out that money and start creating this other passive income outside of that. And so it ends up insulating, insuring, or limiting your risk way quicker if you do that instead of keeping it all in your business. So kudos to you.
Drew, you've got a lot going on. What are you most excited about looking forward?
In some ways, and this sounds odd given that I've owned, these businesses for many years, but we've just scratched the surface on what's possible to do. There's always new ways to serve our clients and help them be better and get to their goals faster. So for me, even though I didn't know it at the time, I clearly have this entrepreneurial bent where it's like, why would I leave my company the same as it was a year ago when I could make it better? Right. And what I love about that is when I make it better for my clients, they make it better for me. Right. So if I do what's right for them and I build out products and services that genuinely help them grow their business, whether it's on the agency side or the AMI side, that's a beautiful thing for me too. Right. Because they keep buying this stuff and they keep, telling their friends about it and driving more traffic to us. And it all comes from simply wanting to keep getting better on their behalf. So what I'm most excited about is, we have some really big new projects queued up for 2018 that I think are really going to help people in a way that we have not been able to help them up to this point. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm excited about the fact that it's going to drive more revenue into the businesses, which allows me to buy more houses and go to more continents and spend more time at Disney World.
Sure does.
So it's all good. And again, it allows me to put more money into my mom's scholarship fund and all of the things that matter to me. For the most part, I get to do.
It's amazing. Okay. So you talked a little bit about, what's next. What would you say would be some advice that you would have to our listeners today?
I think my advice would be, you get one shot at this, and every day you wait and waste means less opportunity. And so you don't have to be speculative. You don't have to be crazy. You don't have to do things that have a lot of risk, but you do have to make choices and sacrifices. So again, if I had kept that super big house and not rented it out, if I was driving a Jag, okay, then I'm probably not going to Australia this year. So for me, it's about choices and consequences. And the quicker you begin to realize, honestly, and I don't say this to be self-deprecating, but honest to God, if Drew McLellan can figure this out, so can you. So start small, surround yourself. Maybe this is my biggest piece of advice. Understand that the possibilities are endless, but you need the right people around you to take advantage of those opportunities. So I've been really fortunate that I have surrounded myself with people like you guys, people like my attorney, people like Eric, my tax guy, who genuinely have my best interest at heart, who genuinely are good human beings that I trust. I would leave my daughter with them, for an afternoon if she was little. These are people that I know believe in what I believe in terms of ethics and honesty. And they're also willing to explore with me for me to go, what would happen if I did this? And it may not result in a sale for them or more money for them, but they too understand that by serving me well, I'm going to keep giving them more money and I'm going to keep turning to them for their advice and counsel. So it's in their best interest to be concerned about my best interest. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the theme, is that if you're not concerned about your own best interest and you don't know the kind of life that you could have for yourself and your family, no one's going to hand that to you. And so even if you start super small, surround yourself with smart, ethical, good people and begin to explore what's possible and what you want out of your life. Figure out where you want to be in 10 years and then baby step it back. And figure out, okay, maybe that means I'm going to up the ante in my 401k. Maybe that means I'm going to invest in something outside of my 401k. Maybe that means I am going to buy a racehorse. Whatever your thing is, right? Whatever your flavor and your appetite will let you get into, there's nothing wrong with asking questions and exploring it. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but today's the day to start. That's my advice. Today is the day.
I totally agree. It's great to be able to just sit here and ask you these questions. Just on a personal testimony for Brian and I, we also use you as in your McLellan marketing. And we interviewed about last year we were thinking about maybe we need to take the next step in marketing. We need to get our story out to more people because we want to help more people, right? And so we started interviewing 3 other companies, and then we had you come in. And I remember it like it was yesterday when you were talking, because you're a client, right? You understand us. You know what makes us tick and gets us going. And so you talked about that. And I remember Brian and I looking at each other like, can we just bottle what you just set up and send it out? Because I think that would be the perfect commercial. And so I called all the other companies that we were interviewing with. And I'm not sure if I even told you this, Drew, but I remember calling each and every one of them, and they all asked that question, right? That old salesman question, like, do you mind if I ask you who you're going to use, right? And I said, Drew McLellan. And they all had the same response. And I didn't really it didn't register until the second time. But the first guy said, huh, really? I'm like, yeah, that's where we're going. The second person had that same response. And by the third time, I was like, okay, what's going on? And then that's when I found out that you're one of the top blogists that help marketers get people to where they want to go and coach them. And so I want to just personally thank you for the way that you've helped Brian and I and the Uncommon Wealth Partners get to where it's at. And like you, we surround ourselves with people that we can trust, honest and integrity, that care about us and help us where we're going. And that's definitely been you and your company. And so we hope that this interview was one that was kind of fun for you to give. We hope that it gave your listeners of your own podcast something a little bit different angle into your personal, the way that you've set up your business. What else would you say?
Yeah, I just totally humbled. Drew actually named our company, and we were, I would say, at a point of really the fork in the road and needed help telling our story and branding or bottling, I guess, what we've been doing for 5 years. So just a huge thank you for all that you do for us and all that you do for so many. And you are definitely a role model for Philip and I can't wait to see what's in store for you in the future.
Well, we've just begun on you guys. So I'm excited for 2018 to see what we can shake loose for you too. And to me, that's part of the fun of the work that we do. So when I started the agency, one of my first rules was we're never going to work for somebody that we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can't get excited about what they do and who they are as human beings, I don't want them as a client. And so that makes work pretty fun when you're helping people that you like, that you genuinely want the world to know more about because they do something special. That's rewarding work in and of itself. So, I'm grateful that you invited us to be a part of your story and help other people learn more about you. And I think we have some pretty cool stuff planned for 2018. So your audience is going to get to know you and get to value who you guys are in a much bigger, better way as we march this out. So it's going to be fun.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time, Drew. And again, if you like this podcast, definitely subscribe. Keep listening to the content that we have. We have a lot more for you guys. And we've only, like Drew said, scratched the surface. So we hope this, is exciting for you guys as we take this journey down, helping people understand residual income. And yeah.
Yeah, Drew, you have a lot of different ways people can find you. What's the best way if people want to know more about you, or where can they find you?
So probably the easiest way is just to go to McLellan Marketing, and McLellan is spelled McLellan, McLellanmarketing.com, and you can get a hold of me there. I'm also pretty much Drew McLellan everywhere: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all of those places. That's my handle because I'm old and I've been doing it for a long time. So I was able to grab my name before someone else did. So happy to answer questions, happy to have listeners reach out. If you have questions about anything that we talked about today, more than happy to be a resource if I can be.
So appreciate that. Thanks for your time today, Drew. And again, just wish you the best and enjoy Disney in January.
I'm going to, because it's going to be cold in Iowa.
Thanks, Drew.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode of the Uncommon Life Project, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.